that you need a vax mandate in the workplace. He is still suing to get OSHA to force employees to get vaccinated. On what basis? On what basis? On the basis that the vaccines are supposed to stop transmission. But we now know that we were lied to by everyone. We were lied to by the scientists. We were lied to by Pfizer. We were lied to by the government. We were lied to by the Biden administration. We were lied to.
Hey, what's going on, folks? So Ben Shapiro, who once told people to get the vaccine, dopes, is admitting he got lied to and switching his stance.
It is now perfectly clear that we were lied to. That we were lied to, and we were lied to at a very high level from very, very early on by both the vaccine companies in terms of the ability of the vaccine to prevent transmission, and we were also lied to by our politicians who apparently knew better. And they just kept lying.
Better late than never. I'm going to play most of this full clip and react to it in live time. I haven't even seen most of it yet, and we're going to talk about it. I appreciate Ben and his company for standing up against the COVID vaccine mandates. That was great. But he claims in this clip that he's anti-mandate. Is he really though? Because in February 2020, he justified some mandates and said it's equivalent to you poisoning a well downstream and you don't have the right to do that.
Again, being anti-mandate, because I don't believe that the government should mandate this sort of stuff, because again, the vaccine protects you once you take it yourself. Well, sure, it's a river, you're polluting it, but the problem is that pollution is affecting somebody else downstream. You don't have a right to do that, even in the most libertarian sort of vision of the world, right? That would violate tort law. So the idea that you have to have an environmental regulation that dictates that sort of thing makes some sense. When it comes to herd immunity for diseases, where you require 100% of the population to be vaccinated in order to prevent the transmission of diseases to people who can't actually have the vaccine, well, then you're talking about a non-libertarian principle being invoked, so I don't have a general problem with that.
Hopefully he's changed his stance on that completely, not just on the COVID vaccine mandates, but we're going to talk about it and react today. The show starts now.
The Dream Rare Podcast, welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Dream Rare Podcast. I'm dressed like Voldemort today. I'm not really sure why I just threw on this hoodie, but we're going to talk about Ben Shapiro apologizing, or at least rescinding his support for the COVID vaccine, saying he was lied to and saying we were lied to on all fronts. Real quick, before I play the clips, because I'm going to do a reaction, I actually haven't heard most of these clips, so it'll be my first time. I only heard a few of them. This was him during the pandemic. He said, in other words, get the vaccine, dopes. I guess Elijah Schaffer had more insight than Ben Shapiro, so congrats, Elijah, on that. So he was calling people dopes and bullying them into getting the vaccine at the time. I just want to show you something that if Ben didn't show you, then something's wrong. You know, I showed my audience this. I never told people what to do because I'm not your doctor, so I don't want to be responsible if you get it and have a rare side effect. But this was obvious from the beginning. You can't sue Pfizer or Moderna if you have severe COVID vaccine side effects. The government likely won't compensate you either. So I tried to tell my whole people whether they got it or not. I mean, you could ask me my opinion, but I said, make sure you know how this stuff works. Under the PrEP Act, they don't have to pay out. They have no liability for side effects, injuries, and deaths. We all knew about Pfizer, right? It doesn't mean everything they've ever done is bad, but they paid out a $2.3 billion criminal plea, one of the biggest ones, or not, if not the biggest one at the time. They've got caught lying, using, I would say improperly marketed medicines, paying off doctors, you name it. These type of scandals are all over Big Pharma, but Ben apparently had no idea about it and was bullying people into getting the vaccine, calling you a dope, and not even doing the science. Oh, the science changed. No, Ben, this was always obvious. We always knew that you couldn't sue the manufacturer, but I have clips later too to prove that Ben Shapiro not only didn't tell people about this stuff, but he almost downplayed it and made people believe in February of 2020 that, oh, the side effects, it's no big deal. Like, that doesn't prove corruption or anything. So I have all those clips, all the proof. Let's get started. Live reaction.
It is now perfectly clear that we were lied to. That we were lied to, and we were lied to at a very high level from very, very early on by both the vaccine companies in terms of the ability of the vaccine to prevent transmission, and we were also lied to by our politicians who apparently knew better. And they just kept lying. And this is creating, you want to know why there's mistrust in the institutions? It would be because of this kind of stuff. It's because you have experts who are constantly telling the platonic lie to people. And people who want to have faith in the experts, because you have to use heuristics when it comes to the world, right? You can't study down on every single issue. When you go to the doctor, the reason you go to the doctor is because you didn't have time to go to medical school. Right? The reason you go to the plumber is because you didn't have time to learn to become a plumber.
Yeah, I mean, who could have known that the government would lie to us? I mean, my name's Ben Shapiro, and I have to act just utterly shocked that government experts could lie to us. Wow, big pharma and government could lie to us together? No way. Who could have saw that coming besides everybody? And these pseudo-intellectual dummies like Scott Adams, who blocked me on Twitter because I'm awesome and he's a loser. He's like, no one could have predicted. I'm such a... It's like, Scott, your ego's bigger than your brain. That's the issue here. No one could have known that government and big pharma could lie. Have you not paid attention to like all of human history, whether it go far back as the Tuskegee experiment or as recently as the Pfizer fine? Or, I mean, every month there's like products taken off the market, sunscreens, Johnson & Johnson, asbestos, baby powder lawsuit. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But everyone, it's like Ben Shapiro and Scott Adams are going to try to gaslight people and act like it was impossible to know. I appreciate the apology. I appreciate the fact that Ben actually did with his company stand up to the COVID mandates, which should be appreciated. Thank you, Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire. But it's like, it's too funny. Let's keep watching.
The reason that you go to the mechanic is because you don't know how to take cars apart. You have to rely on the expertise of another human being who has spent an inordinate amount of time studying an issue. And then you have to sort of take that data and use it as best you can. Now, it can be that you distrust the data. It can be you don't trust the people who are giving you the data. But the big problem here is that when you have an entire institution like the scientific institutions or the government, and the government is issuing lies in order to get you to do a thing, and then it turns out that these things are lies, well, people's distrust in the institution is going to skyrocket, right? Again, if you outsource your plumbing to a plumber, and the plumber just keeps clogging the lines, at a certain point, you don't use that plumber anymore. If you keep taking your car to the mechanic and the mechanic drops the engine out the bottom of the car, you're not going to go to that mechanic ever again.
I'm Ben Shapiro, and I mean, I just can't believe the government lied to me. I mean, I thought I was so sure.
And as far as the data goes, if people follow my channel since 2020, I was following the data. It was clear in April that they were lying about Sweden. I even called out Donald Trump, who said, oh, Sweden should have locked down longer like Daddy Trump. And I'm like, ew, why is he telling people that lockdowns are good? And everybody got mad at me, but I'm like, that I was reading the data, that you could act like the data just mysteriously changed, maybe on some, ink, but look at where's the data coming from? Oh, Pfizer's data. How many people did they test? Were they humans? Were they rats? I mean, you can look at this stuff. It was pretty obvious, in my opinion, the whole time, even based off the data. So he's going to gaslight you and act like the data wasn't clear. Were you reading the data? Were you crunching the numbers like I was? Clearly not, because if you were, you would have saw some inconsistencies as early as March or April. But whatever, better late than never, I guess.
Well, the same thing is true when it comes to the lies that we were apparently told about the ability of the vaccines to block transmission. So, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a Pfizer executive who was being grilled by members of the ECR, the EU, the European Commission. And this Pfizer executive basically said that they never even tested the COVID jab to determine whether it controlled transmission or not. This is an astonishing acknowledgement. She was asked a question, and her name is Janine Small. She was Pfizer's president of international developed markets. She made this admission before the European Union Parliament. She was asked by European Union Member of Parliament Rob Roos if the company tested the mRNA vaccine on stopping transmission before they rolled it out. And here is what she said.
I'm going to play that clip in a second, but first, we've played it before, but we'll play it again. The fact checkers are going after this and saying fact check, they're trying to confuse people with fact checks. And the fact check says, if you read it, it says fact check, Pfizer never claimed to test transmission. So if you got vaccinated, you're left wing, right wing, you thought it was going to stop transmission, maybe you got bullied into it, I don't care. But did it seem like they were telling you that you were getting it to stop transmission? It definitely seemed that way. I mean, I saw through their lies very early on, so I wasn't really following the propaganda and the lies. But most people think that they told them it was going to protect transmission, because a lot of people actually did. But these fact checkers are coming out and they're not saying, oh, fact check, Pfizer actually did test transmission. They're lying. They're saying fact check, yeah, Pfizer didn't test the transmission and have data to prove that. But we never said that. We never even told you that. How many billions of dollars were spent by celebrities, athletes, telling you all these things, and now they're going to sit back. So I just want people to know who were vaccinated, left wing, right wing, I don't care, that they're not claiming that Pfizer tested it. They're claiming that Pfizer never said they tested it. Is that the message that you got when they were pumping this into people's arms? Of course not. It's just the fact checkers are professional PR operatives for big pharma Democrats and the global agenda, and they act like they're nonpartisan. It's such an absolute joke.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
But you didn't move at the speed of science. In fact, it turns out that you were basically lying to the American public and to the global public.
Speed of science. Run. Net profits for Pfizer. Speed of science. $10 billion profit, $20 billion profit. We're running at the speed of science. We have no liability if you get injured. We'll just use our friends in big tech to act like it's not happening. Speed of science. All you need to know about big pharma, whether it be Purdue Pharmaceuticals and the opioid crisis, whether it be Johnson & Johnson with the asbestos and the baby powder, whether it be Pfizer with one of the biggest criminal fines in this industry in modern history, all you need to know is they lie, they make money, they pay money, nobody ever gets arrested, and the money they paid wasn't as much as the money they made, so they just keep doing it. This isn't rocket science. Scott Adams can, his head's so far up his rear end, he's looking into his butthole and he thinks he's on Mars or something with Elon Musk. It's like they're going to gaslight you into believing that they're so much smarter than you because Ben Shapiro's like, I mumble, I'm a mumbler, so I must be really... You're not smart, bro. You debate 17-year-old liberals in college campuses to make or 19-year-old, whatever, to make yourself look really smart. You're actually dumb, or you're fake, or both. I don't know, but all I'm trying to say is I appreciate the apology. I appreciate you standing up to the mandates, but don't let Scott Adams, or as they call him, Clot Adams nowadays, or, Ben Shapiro, or, Gwen Shapiro, don't let them convince you that this wasn't possible to figure out early on. It absolutely was, and thousands of us knew this, reported this, and accurately pointed out the flaws in the data in 2020. So it's not a competition, but you can't gaslight people into acting like this wasn't possible to see through. The government could lie to me? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
About the ability of these vaccines to stop transmission, which is an amazing, amazing thing because, again, huge swaths of people who are pushing vax mandates. So I never pushed vaccine mandates. My company actually sued to prevent the Biden vax mandate from going forward in the United States with regard to OSHA. But this was pushed on the basis that you would not infect mom and dad if you got the vax yourself. You did it for the community. You didn't just get the vax for yourself. You got the vax for the community. Well, if you got the vax for yourself, good for you. I mean, that was your choice. But again, the idea that was promoted, and it makes me really, really angry to be lied to by these people, especially because these people then continue to claim their expertise. They continue to claim that we should believe them on everything. And then they whine that people don't believe the science. You never presented science.
First of all, thank you, Ben Shapiro, for being against the COVID mandate. I'm going to show you later that he's actually not against vaccine mandates, and he's probably still not against some, so we're going to bring that up. But push come to shove, he was against the vaccine mandates, and he deserves to be... Thank you, Ben Shapiro. We appreciate you standing up. That means a lot. You didn't have to do that, and I'm not being sarcastic. I actually do appreciate it. So I do appreciate that fight. That was one good thing he did, so we got to call it like we see it. We'll keep watching.
Instead, you presented a platonic lie about what exactly was going to happen if people took the vax. It was going to die down. There would be no more transmission. And what's more, it turns out the Biden White House knew this and they promoted the lie anyway. This is truly amazing stuff here. According to the Washington Post, this was basically glossed over in nearly all the media. I'm not sure anybody caught it. So the Washington Post did this long story. It came out just on Sunday or Saturday. It was called Inside the Successes, Missteps, and Failures of Biden's Early Presidency. And it was sort of a recapitulation of the first year and 2/3 of the Biden presidency, which have been a gigantic failure. And they talk in this article about Joe Biden's COVID response. And here's what the Washington Post says, quote, "From the start, Biden's COVID response was anchored around two ideas. He would follow the science, and the science would show the way to ending the pandemic."
I want to play two other clips real quick. All I want to say is when it comes to Big Pharma, since the national, and this is something that a lot of us were talking about. I know Candace Owens talked about it. Robert Kennedy Jr. talked about it. They passed something called the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act during the Reagan administration. And at that point, a lot of vaccine manufacturers were losing money because people were suing when they got injured. Even if it's rare, it really adds up to, when you're doing millions of them. So the government and Big Pharma came together to basically stop people from suing vaccine manufacturers, and they had liability immunity. Once that happened, you saw the vaccine schedule rise in children. And at that point, the media started calling people anti-vaxxers when they used to talk about it. You used to be able to watch a 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace, and he would talk about vaccine injuries with the big swine flu vaccine scandal of 1970s. If you look that up, there's a whole video about it. But then it became this sort of collusion thing where it's like pump more and more vaccines, tell everybody they're crazy for talking about it. During the COVID rollout, they acted like the VAERS reporting system was a conspiracy theory, when the VAERS reporting system to report vaccine injuries and adverse events was actually created during the Reagan administration, because once they took liability away from Big Pharma, they needed a system to keep track of the vaccine injuries to make sure that nothing was going wrong. That was the deal. We give you immunity, we create VAERS. And now you have Facebook, YouTube, Google, a lot of Democrats, some Republicans even, acting as if it's this crazy, kooky conspiracy theory to talk about the government-created system. So the point I'm trying to get to before we move on is this was so obvious. You're giving them tens of billions of dollars. The government is colluding. The Trump administration, to be honest, started it. They passed all these sort of things. The pharma lobbyist executive Alex Azar was the head of Human Health Services. Google him. Trump put a pharmacy lobbyist at the head of HHS, declared an emergency. They had executive orders the previous year to make a task force, for a universal flu vaccine, which then, I'm not going to say it's the same thing, but it's eerily similar to what they did in 2020. You're not allowed to say it's similar, but it really is. And then all this stuff starts rolling out. What do you think is going to happen when you give Big Pharma 15, 16, 17 billion dollars, and then nobody can criticize them while they have immunity under the PrEP Act, which was passed under George Bush. So during an emergency, they don't have liability. It's all so obvious. It's not new. But I want to play this clip real quick because although I think we need to be honest and give Ben Shapiro a lot of credit for being against the COVID vaccine mandates, he didn't have to do that, but I appreciate him, and I really do. In February 2020, about a month before the lockdown, he got in this very interesting debate with one of his callers who was really smart about vaccines. I don't want to play the whole clip because I don't want to get flagged for copyright. You should go look it up on YouTube. Just search like mandatory vaccine Ben Shapiro. It's a great clip. But Ben Shapiro actually said before the lockdown that he was pro-mandate, and he might actually still be pro-mandate in certain cases, with other vaccines. And I hope he wakes up to the reality of what's going on here and backs off that too. But let's take a watch. This is from February 2020.
Again, being anti-mandate, because I don't believe that the government should mandate this sort of stuff, because again, the vaccine protects you once you take it yourself. Well, sure, it's a river, you're polluting it, but the problem is that pollution is affecting somebody else downstream. You don't have a right to do that, even in the most libertarian sort of vision of the world, right? That would violate tort law. So the idea that you have to have an environmental regulation that dictates that sort of thing makes some sense. When it comes to herd immunity for diseases where you require 100% of the population to be vaccinated in order to prevent the transmission of diseases to people who can't actually have the vaccine, well, then you're talking about a non-libertarian principle being invoked, so I don't have a general problem with that. As to the second question, which is a question about the sort of, well, there are three questions, right? There was the libertarian question, then there was the aborted fetal cell question, and which vaccines those are used in. So number one, I'd have to know which specific vaccinations you're talking about. Is there an ongoing use of aborted fetal cells, or are we talking, as you suggest, in many of the most kind of popular vaccines?
So I'm going to play the rest of that clip in a second, but the caller asked three questions. She said, Ben, I know you're against abortion. There's aborted fetal cells in certain vaccines. Ben, what do you think of mandates? So he was breaking down a 3-answer question. The first one, he said he's pro-mandate, but of course he mumbles and tries to act like he's smart when he's not, like Sam Harris, so it's hard to tell. He said, well, even in the most libertarian societies, if you're poisoning a river, you don't have the right to do that. So he's saying if you don't get certain vaccines, it's equivalent to poisoning a river. You don't have the right to do that. Even libertarians agree. So he's actually pro-mandate. This wasn't 20 years ago, guys. This was in 2020, a month before the lockdown. He said that for a lot of vaccines, he is pro-mandate, and he probably still is pro-mandate unless he learned his lesson from COVID. And then as somebody who's anti-abortion, he explains why he's fine with injecting you with aborted fetal cells. And keep in mind that he, in this answer, is pro-mandate. He said, you can't pollute the river. You need to get these if it 100% prevents infection. So he doesn't allow you to opt out. He thinks it's fine if they force it into you and kick you out of society, but he acknowledges that there's fetal cells going into you, but he's fine with it because he thinks that if it's old fetal cells, then just inject it into your body. Who cares? That's his logic here. Let's watch.
We're talking about the use of aborted cells, cells from an aborted fetus in 1950, and there are still cell lines that are being produced from that aborted fetus. When you're talking about a wrong that happened 50, 60 years ago, and you are talking about the inability to utilize a vaccine that is currently on the market, and the wrong can't be undone, then I don't really have a problem with people using those vaccines. If you're talking about aborting babies right now, like fetal stem cell research, in order to do research, then you're talking about an ongoing problem that's happening in the here and now. And then I do have a problem, presumably, with using those sorts of vaccines or doing even medical research using those sort of fetal stem cell lines. And then finally, you were asking about the risks of vaccinations. It's been well substantiated that the risks of vaccinations, particularly the most popular ones, are extraordinarily low. When we talk about the government having a fund to settle all this sort of stuff, that's because if the government is mandating that these sorts of vaccinations be carried out on a wide range of the population, they don't want the tort system to disincentivize vaccine makers from making those sorts of vaccines in the first place. And so they have picked up the liability on behalf of the taxpayers. It is important to note that $4 billion in liability over the course of 50 years for 330 million Americans is actually not a large amount of money, nor is it an admission that the vaccines are actually what is causing the sort of bad things to happen.
His eyes are like floating behind his head when he's talking about that. He's like, yeah, there's been billions of dollars paid out in vaccine injuries, but that doesn't mean the vaccine did it. And, I'm against abortion, but it's fine to inject them into your body if it's old abortions. And, I'm pro mandate because you can't pollute the well. So it's like, this guy's the ultimate snake. So before the lockdown, just a couple months before, he's calling people dopes. He's basically trying to bully people into getting the vaccine. He's downplaying what everybody knows, which is the liability that you can't sue. I can't stand this guy. I'm going to play a few more clips, but I want to show you, this is an old tweet, but this just shows you really who he is. Everybody likes Ron Paul. Not everybody, but he's one of the more ethical politicians of the last couple decades. Libertarian, wanted to end the wars. This is what Ben Shapiro used to say about Ron Paul when he ran. Ron Paul is manifestly insane. As in previous debates, he is now gripping the pen as he would the neck of a Jew. So Ron Paul's, this is what a victim and a liar Ben Shapiro is. When he calls Kanye West a Nazi, he literally accused Kanye of pushing Nazi propaganda like last week, not like a long time ago. He's watching Ron Paul be like, end the wars, let's end the Federal Reserve. And in Ben Shapiro's sick little freakish mind, he's like, oh, Ron Paul's gripping his pen like he would the neck of a Jewish person. And it's like, Ron Paul wouldn't even harm a fly. He's the most nonviolent politician I've ever seen. He's literally trying to stop a war, and you're accusing him of wanting to choke your ethnic group or your religion or whatever you want to consider it today or tomorrow. It doesn't exist. It does exist. I know the little game you play, Ben. I see it. So it's like he hasn't learned his lesson. People are like, oh, that's so long ago. Guys, he just called Kanye West a Nazi propagandist, basically, a couple days ago, within 2 weeks. He's such a snake. What do you think if Ben Shapiro brands you a Nazi? What happens to a Nazi in this society? Left-wingers say they can attack and punch Nazis. There's movies about killing Nazis. Nazis get banned off social media, obviously. And Ben Shapiro calls Kanye a Nazi. How is that not Ben Shapiro trying to get Kanye West kicked off of media, censored, and killed? Ben Shapiro is the ultimate snake. He's the ultimate fraud. He's the ultimate weasel. He's the ultimate play both sides and call everything anti-Semitic when you realize who I really am. I can't stand this guy. He tried to bully people into getting a vaccination when everybody knew that that wasn't the right thing to do. He lied about the data and misinterpreted pretty much everything that thousands of us who have way less of a staff and a budget than he has figured it out very quickly. He's pro mandate, but then he fought the COVID mandate. Thank God. I can't stand this guy. And then he downplayed vaccine injuries like a couple months before the lockdown. But let's watch some more of his, like, I can't believe the government and Big Pharma lied, little fake apology tour. Now, 2 years after, like, the safest time ever to come out against it. It's like everyone came out against it like 2 months ago, but we'll watch a few more clips.
After his first meeting with his COVID team, he gave them a pep talk. He said, I know this is going to be hard. I know there will be ups and downs. Things will not always go smoothly, but promise me this. You will tell me when there's a problem. You will put it on the table and together we can solve it. For months afterward, he had a catchphrase he would use. Tell me what to do, docs, the president would frequently say. But the reality was more complicated. Pfizer-BioNTech announced after the 2020 elections that their vaccine was more than 90% effective at preventing infection. Weeks later, Moderna announced over 94% efficacy at preventing infection. We still have not seen where that data came from, since it turns out not to be remotely true. That was the data that people like me were citing back in December 2020 when we suggested that it was important to get the vaccine. Again, being anti-mandate, because I don't believe that the government should mandate this sort of stuff, because, again, the vaccine protects you once you take it yourself.
I just proved that 2 years ago he was pro-mandate, but that's fine. While he was citing Moderna data, oh, God, I got fooled by Moderna. Who could have thought? I was telling people who originally funded Moderna years ago, Bill Gates, the fact that they've never had a product on the market. It's a new synthetic mRNA company for the most part. I told people to read the book, How to Lie with Statistics, which exactly explain how they lied with statistics. So as Ben Shapiro was using big pharma statistics, where did those statistics come from? It's just a simple math equation in your head. Let's just use an example, okay? I'm not going to talk about COVID-19, but let's just use a specific, a fake virus, right? For an example, bleep blue blarb virus, okay? The bleep blue blarb virus comes around and they do a study and say Moderna, I'm not saying they did this, but just in alternate reality, they did a study and they tested, 1,000 people or a couple thousand people for a month. And, they inject people with a vaccine and 95% of people don't get the virus, or they go 3 months without getting sick or testing positive with COVID-19. They can then publish that data and say this vaccine's 95% effective. 95% of the study didn't get COVID-19. But then what's the placebo group doing? You get what I'm saying? Like, maybe those people, if they didn't get vaccinated, wouldn't have got COVID anyway. I'm not saying that's what they did, because I'd have to revisit that data that I did crunch at the time, but I don't remember. There's been so many studies that didn't come true. But this is called How to Lie with Statistics. The whole book is about how you could fudge data in your direction to get the results that you really want. If you say, well, we vaccinated, 1 million people and it's, 99% effective at getting rid of death, what if those 1 million people didn't get vaccinated? How many were going to die? These are the equations that they're not crunching in your head, because most people, here's another one that nobody thought of, okay? How many times have you gotten a flu test, right? They said the flu disappeared. How many times have you gotten tested for the flu? Me, in my whole life, 0. I've got diagnosed with the flu multiple times, but I've never had a flu test. So how in the world did they know I have a flu without shoving a PCR test up my nose, which I'd never allow them to do, and I never had? Because like if Thomas Massey said, if they rupture a part of your membrane, it's under the PrEP Act, and they have no liability for damaging you. They don't care. I'm not saying everyone got damaged, but some people did. The point I'm getting to is, how many times did you get tested for the flu? If you looked at how they were giving people COVID-19 positive tests, they were using a PCR test. How many cycles was that PCR test going? That might make a difference, no? And then also in multiple states, I did breakdowns in 2020 that Ben Shapiro is either too fake or dumb to do. He's too busy debating, liberals on Karl Marx or something that are 19 and in college and hate themselves and are on drugs. But in general, we're crunching these numbers back in 2020, and it's like, how are they giving COVID positive test? It wasn't just the PCR test. They said, if you have a cough and you've been around somebody, you can get a positive treatment. If you have a sore throat and you've been around somebody, they had a 3-pronged system. And they said, if you have 2 out of 3 of these things, which Elon Musk did a way better job. Elon Musk on Joe Rogan in 2020 did 10,000 times the job that Trump or Ben Shapiro did. I'm not shilling for Elon. I'm just saying, if you listen to his 2020 Joe Rogan interview, he told the truth about everything. I was thrilled at the time because I was like, wow, he didn't have to do that. He was being like, how are they testing? How are they giving you positives? He saw through the whole thing immediately, and he was going way harder than Donald Trump at the time at trying to tell people that they were exaggerating about stuff. So I'm just saying, for like, there's something called intellectual, which is like, how many cycles is the PCR test doing? What is the PCR test? Who's the founder? What did they say about it? You know, do they have liability? Has Big Pharma ever lied before? That's called being intellectual. How are they testing? How are these 95%, you know, numbers from Moderna? Should I trust Moderna on their own data about their own thing, or should I wait for a third party test? How many people did they test? How long was the test? Was it only 2 months? Then how many of those people wouldn't have got sick if they didn't get the vaccine? The same exactly. This is called intellectual. This is something that Sam Harris is not, Ben Shapiro is not. Ben Shapiro just mumbles like a little like child, and people think that he's smart because he mumbles and talks really fast. He's an idiot. He's the right-wing Sam Harris. And same with Scott, aka Clot Adams. You know, Clot Adams has a brain clot, or not literally. God bless you, Scott. I hope you're healthy and safe. I only manifest the most beautiful things, but it's like, you know, I'm not saying he got damaged by the blank, but he's acting like it. I'm not saying he did, but it's like, you know, these people are so dumb. It's like Gary Kasparov, you know, it's like he's so smart, yet he's so dumb. So I don't understand where these people are going, but let's watch the final clip of Ben Shapiro, who thinks he looks good in a jean jacket, but he really looks like a Gerber baby model wearing Oshkosh Bagosh.
Is that you need a vax mandate in the workplace. He's still suing to get OSHA to force employees to get vaccinated. On what basis? On what basis? On the basis that the vaccines are supposed to stop transmission. But we now know that we were lied to by everyone. We were lied to by the scientists. We were lied to by Pfizer. We were lied to by the government. We were lied to by the Biden administration. We were lied to. I don't like being lied to. I don't know about you. And it makes me not believe these people.
Again. Okay, I'm here. Apologize for that. I'm going to play that clip again because he's like, he couldn't believe, like, I don't understand how people like or believe this guy. Sure, listen to his videos. I'm not trying to knock somebody's hustle, but it's like, how could you not tell this guy's full of malarkey? I'm going to say malarkey, look.
Is that you need a vax mandate in the workplace. He's still suing to get OSHA to force employees to get vaccinated. On what basis? On what basis? On the basis that the vaccines are supposed to stop transmission. But we now know that we were lied to by everyone.
We now know that we were lied to by everyone. Like, he doesn't even believe himself. He's so full of it. And you don't look good in a jean jacket, Ben. You look like a baby, a toddler model at a Oscar Mayer Wiener convention, you know, wearing Oshkosh Bagosh, that mommy bottom, okay? That's what you look like to all of us. You don't look cool or trendy. You look like a baby, a big baby model. Sorry, I'm trying to get the chat up. The only reason I joke about these people and go at them is because I don't consider, like, people will be like, Anomaly, that's so mean that you're saying he looks like an Oshkosh Bagosh model, even though he does. It's like, you know what mean is, guys? This is mean. Trying to bully people into getting a vaccine when the government's mandating the vaccine, when you can't sue them if you have a severe side effect, knowing that they've been settling billion-dollar record fines. That's mean, okay? Trying to bully your audience and be like, I'm so smart. My wife's a doctor. Okay, I mumble a lot, so go get your vaccine, you dope. That's mean, okay? Not me telling you that Ben Shapiro smears everybody as a Nazi who tells the truth to you, like Ron Paul, who he accused of wanting to hurt Jewish people for grabbing a pen, and Kanye West for talking about statistics and trends in media. Like, this guy is such a snake, okay? So me saying he looks like an Oshkosh Bagosh model is not as mean as him bullying millions of people in his audience or tricking them into thinking he's really smart. Read the book How to Lie with Statistics. Venice Beach Dope Club said, just making sure we trust the government when it comes to waging war on every country in the Middle East for their own good shit, Ben Shapiro. Well, it's just so funny. I don't mind people who made a mistake, but what annoys me is, like, you know, first of all, Clotty Adams, Scotty, who's just like, it wasn't possible. It's like, dude, just take the L. Just take the L, Dilbert, man. You know, it's fine, dude. You're like, you made a mistake. It's not a big deal. We all make mistakes. We all sin. We're all flawed. But Clotty Scotty is just like, it's not even humanly, physically possible to have known the truth. You didn't know. Like, literally, he blocked me because I was ratioing him, just making fun of him. But it was like, you know, for my own entertainment. But he's like, you didn't know. You just got lucky. you got lucky. I'm Dilbert. I'm the smartest. And he was literally like telling his audience he's smarter than them. Like, if you couldn't have known, it's like, bro, you might have a plumber in your audience who's 20 times as smart as you. Get over it. Okay, you wrote a Dilbert book. You're quirky and you're somewhat funny, but like overall, like you don't have the common sense when it comes to big pharma. He's like blown away that big pharma and big government could lie. And then he acts like, I wouldn't mind if he just said, hey, I was wrong. I'm sorry. You know, it's like, okay, it's all good. But like, he's gaslighting his audience. Cloudy Scotty's gaslighting his audience into thinking it's not even possible to know. Like that it's like physically impossible. You just got lucky. Same with Ben Shapiro. He didn't really, I mean, maybe at the end he apologized and I didn't watch it all the way through, but it's, to me, that's okay. It's, yeah, that's nice that he's telling the truth now. It's like Stephen A. Smith when Stephen A. Smith was against Kyrie Irving, you know, when it mattered, and now he's like supporting him. It's like it's really late. I do appreciate Ben standing up against the mandates, though. I do appreciate that, but the gaslighting from these people, they're not like, oh, I was wrong, I'm gonna learn. You know, it's just like, oh, the government lied, big pharma lied. I mean, their data was wrong. Read the book How to Lie with Statistics, please. It's on, let me see if I have it right here. Hold on one second. It's on the Bill Gates reading list. Let me see if I have it over here. I can't find it, but it's one of the best books I read of the year. And it's very revealing. And I have to say real quick, I'm going to do more videos about it. I really want to leave this Kanye West situation alone because now I'm getting smeared by like these Jewish organizations. There was this Jewish group on Instagram. It was called Jewish Lives Matter. And I'm like, oh, great. This left-wing Jewish organization that's like BLM, they're going to hate me. But they're like, you're an anti-Semite. And like they had like 40,000 followers. So they started like posting my DMs to them because I was like, no, you're anti-Semitic. You know, you're a liar. So they posted my DMs and they posted my tweets, which are obviously hilarious, true, and amazing. And people started going to their page and being like, hey, I'm a Jew and I love Anomaly. Like, the, you know, Jewish women, Jewish men. This guy's like, I'm Jewish in New York City. We love Anomaly. I'm Israeli. We love Anomaly. So like they were getting ratioed, and I think it bothered them because they weren't just getting ratioed by like white nationalists who hate Jews. They were getting ratioed by literal Jews. Like more Jews came to my support than non-Jews. And I appreciate the Jews that came disproportionately in my favor. It's not just media that suspiciously is controlled. No, I'm just kidding. But they're like, I have articles that prove ownership. But, you know, just to point out a truth, a disproportional amount of Jews also came to defend me. So maybe there's just a lot of abased Jews around here supporting your boy. But long story short, you know, I don't want to talk about this Kanye West situation much longer because I've said my piece. But Charlemagne the God called Kanye West a Nazi. And Charlemagne the God is on camera. I'm going to point out his hypocrisy tomorrow. Is on camera saying the same thing Kanye's saying. Ben Shapiro, I can't just get over this sort of stuff because, you know, Ben Shapiro calling Kanye a Nazi or a Nazi propagandist, basically. Do people think that's not calling for him to get heard or censorship? I'm not saying like, oh, you can't brand somebody, but this type of stuff is just so whack to me. So it's like, I don't consider these people on my side really when they're constantly doing this type of stuff, but appreciate you guys. God bless you. I'll be back soon. I'm going to keep this video pretty short. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Thank you, Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro, for fighting the COVID vaccine mandates. You know, you were wrong about the vaccine for a couple of years, but at least you stepped up there. And all I ask is that you stop blacklisting, gaslighting people, and calling everyone Nazis when they tell the truth to you, and have a conversation because, you know, I don't know. I'm not trying to see Ron Paul and Kanye get smeared. Not on my watch. God bless you guys. Check out dreamrare.com if you'd like to see some of my merch. I appreciate you. And my email list is stayintouchwithme.com. And my Patreon is patreon.com/raretalk. Thank you to everybody supporting. And Facebook, by the way, I said this last time, but Facebook turned back on my monetization. I'm guessing it's because their earnings were so bad. They're probably broke and desperate for money. So, I mean, I'll get it any way I can at this point. But they never emailed me and said, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. It was like their earnings came out. They were down 25%. They're losing billions of dollars because Mark, Zuckerberg is so interested in the metaverse with crappy animation that nobody wants to use. So I think they turned and they're like, oh, I might as well I need this money. It's like, yeah, I'm sure you do. So let's stop demonetizing over here. Thank you guys. I'll be back.